We are sincerely grateful that you are here. We know that you've got an awful lot going on. So thank you very, very much for stopping by. Curiouser.AI is essentially a generative AI company that has flipped the script on traditional AI. And what we're doing is we're designing generative AI solutions that primarily work to make the user smarter, to challenge the user, to make us better at what we do, not worse at what we do. It's also designed to create jobs, not try and eliminate them. And quite frankly, it's designed to elevate humanity rather than spread a lot of false narratives and basically try and scare us all to death. That's the distinction. By way of origin story, let's time travel back to 1994. Believe it or not, that's when this idea came to me, 1994. You're sitting at the Harvard Business School in a class called Technology and Operations Management, affectionately known as TOM. And it was the most horrible experience of my life up until that point in time. It was so brutal, and I was so clueless, and I had never, ever in my life felt stupider than I felt sitting in that class. And it was a profound experience for me because I had to do a whole lot of soul searching. And I looked around at all of my fellow section mates, all of whom seemed to be following along just fine. And I'm like going, what is going on here? And then Kaz, the professor, starts teaching us Toyota, okay? And in the 1930s,
all right, guy, I don't know this, guys.
Toyota invented a very simple algorithm called the 5 Whys. Real simple. I'm sure you've all heard of it. But you ask why repeatedly until you get to root cause, till you get to first principles. And that's when it dawned on me that being smart, being brilliant, maybe even being a genius isn't as correlated to IQ as many of us think, but it's directly correlated to how well we know how to think. And that thinking is actually a learned craft, and you can get better at it. And I thought to myself, wouldn't it be amazing to be able to create a technology that would help all of us think better, be smarter, be better at what we do, be more innovative. Fast forward to 2022, 2023, and the technology arrived. It's here. And this technology can do that. And it's not being designed to do that, but it can do that. I'm here with Maori. By way of brief introduction, I'm Stephen Klein, founder, CEO. I've been building this dream, this nightmare, both for over 3 years now. It's been my lifelong passion. I've loved every minute of it, as challenging as it has been. I've had 3 exits. The most recent exit was a company that I founded in 2008, and we sold it to Goldman Sachs in 2015. It was a company called Loyal3. It was a technology platform that democratized the capital markets. We worked with the SEC, we worked with Wall Street. We were the first ones to distribute stock, IPO stock, directly from a company going public to to their customers, to their partners, to everyday ordinary Americans, so that they could offer their stock at the same price and the same time as Wall Street. So we help companies go public like Virgin America. I worked with Square, I worked with HubSpot, Dave & Buster's, AMC Theater. Prior to this, most recently, I ran innovation and marketing for the largest law firm in the world from 2015 to 2021. Did an awful lot in terms of technology infrastructure within the firm. It was very decentralized, 22,000 people, about 18,000 lawyers, huge firm. But what really, really fascinated me was that I became what would be called an AI ethics expert, which is really a myth. There's no such thing. But I guess I knew more than most people. So I was able to travel all over the world and speak to lawyers, speak to clients, and talk about AI ethics, both in terms of data bias and training, as well as alignment issues and so forth. The ABA even gave credit to US lawyers for attending some of my seminars. I teach at UC Berkeley. Teaching is a passion of mine. I teach AI ethics, entrepreneurship, and marketing to undergrad and graduate students. And I'm also in the process of writing 2 books, working with Georgetown University and the publishing group there. One book is What the World Will Look Like Post-Automation, a world I call Age of Meaning. It's an optimistic vision of the future. I am not one of those pushing dystopian theories. I don't buy them. That's how we always see technology initially. We always think the worst. And the other is a book called The Rogue Entrepreneur, a spiritual guide to builders, misfits, and dreamers. So that's a little bit about me. Mayuri, my absolutely brilliant colleague, will introduce yourself now.
Hello. Thank you for joining us. So my background, it spans across 3 areas. It's technology, data science, and then a long-term experience in strategy and transformation. On the technology side, I am an electronics and telecommunications engineer. I focused on robotics, and the earliest jobs in my career were related to systems programming for alarm systems and other electronic devices. Moved from there to get my MBA at Emory and switched over into sort of a parallel track. I did data science with BBDO. It's the Omnicom Group for big businesses like Starbucks, AT&T, FedEx. And then I taught data science at Emory for quite some time while I was at PwC and KPMG, simultaneously doing strategy and transformation for really large clients across all industries. From utilities, chemicals, manufacturing, retail, etc. And the last couple of years prior to Curiouser, I was doing the same thing, strategy and transformation, but on the private equity side. So Blackstone owned portfolio companies, and also Centerbridge and Vistria. So it's really a career that spans across all the different elements that we want to bring together as we think about the future of Gen AI, the future of corporate America, ways of working, a lot of which we are like developing technology to address. So it's really exciting to be able to do that. And so that's my role here, to bring it all together. And it's really exciting for us to have you guys here to also be a part of that journey. So thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Mayuri. Suffice it to say that we've got a lot of really smart people, accomplished people that are supporting us and are deeply engaged, both either as investors in a previous round or as advisors. And just by way, I'll just highlight a few, but David and Josh were our first investors. They run a private equity firm. I've known Josh all the way back to my Harvard days. He was in my study group, believe it or not. We go way, way back. But they were our first investors. They were the first ones to believe in us. Steven Strauss founded an AI engineering firm in Austin, Texas. They do quite well. They actually do work with Google and others. Jeff Modisett, I've known Jeff 20 years. He worked for me, then I worked for him, but he was elected Attorney General for the state of Indiana. And he was the one who prosecuted Mike Tyson, which is a fascinating story. And then he was also one of the key organizers to pull together the attorneys general across the US and take on tobacco. So he's kind of my hero. Eduardo is a senior Amazon exec based out of Madrid, AWS. A lot of wonderful people. We are not bound by law to share this disclosure, but we're values-based. And I think it's important because there's a lot of people on this call, and I'm going to assume there's some unsophisticated investors on this call, as well as probably very sophisticated investors. But want to make it very, very clear that investing in startups is risky. And the majority of startups fail. And you should only invest, if you choose to invest, an amount of money that you are okay losing. And that everything we share with you is as truthful as we can possibly make it, based on our best understanding of the information that we have available to us at that point in time. So simply put, this is risky, and we're bound to represent this industry, this business, as candidly and as transparently as is humanly possible. And we take that very seriously. Our vision is to build an AI designed to amplify human intelligence, not replace human effort. It seems so simple. And yet that isn't what the industry is doing right now. The industry is broken. Generative AI isn't broken. The industry is broken. Two data points that I think are absolutely stunning. One of which is that according to the US Census, enterprise adoption of generative AI hasn't slowed down, it's reversed, people. It's reversed. That's stunning. 3.5 years into it, the enterprise is running the other way. Secondly, there are some eerie alignment between the current market and what happened pre-dot-com, 1999 and 2000. I, for one, believe that a correction is absolutely inevitable based on my studying bubbles and tech. And the apocalypse isn't real either. There are not bloodbaths taking place in the United States of America. I can't speak for outside of this country, but people are not losing jobs and being replaced by generative AI en masse. It isn't happening. And there are independent, peer-reviewed studies to support that. Granted, the vast majority of the data that's pushed out there supports the bloodbath narrative because that's good for business. But it's simply not true. Generative AI can't replace people. It's too error prone. It just defies common sense. Our first use case is to focus on entrepreneurs and small businesses. Why? 3 very simple reasons. A, it's an enormous market. Enormous market. There's as many as 60 million entrepreneurs and small business people in the US. It's exploding in terms of growth. 1 in 4 Americans plan on starting a business within the next year or two. So it's an enormous market. It's underserved. It's exploding in terms of growth. And 2/3 of all net new jobs in the US are created by entrepreneurs and small businesses. We are the ones to push the economy forward, not the large companies. So it's important both in terms of wealth creation for ourselves, our team, and our investors, but also important in terms of impact. To boil it all down, what we design is an augmentation, generative AI. We call reflective AI. And the difference is that traditional AI, automation AI, is really designed to do as much thinking for you as it can. It's designed to help you go faster and make your life easier. And in reality, it will make you mediocre. You will regress to the mean. And we can have that discussion all day long if you'd like. But I don't think that's even debatable at this point. Reflective AI is designed to think with you, ask you questions, challenge you, get to know you, slow you down, so that you can differentiate yourself and be a better version of yourself. With that, I'm going to turn things over to Mayuri, and she's going to walk you through some of the specifics around the business opportunity.
Yes, for sure. And we have some good questions coming in. So I'll maybe see if I can weave some of them in the narrative, and I'll go really fast.
Mayuri, sorry to interrupt it, but we were scheduled for 45 minutes, and we're going to do our best to do that. But if anybody wants to stay on after that, questions, whatever, we're here. Okay, so we'll make that offer. Mayuri.
So just quickly talking about opportunity. So, we have just the US AI software market value, $50 billion a year. Then you have small businesses, mid-sized enterprises. And if, they're spending like $25 a month, that's, and that's, the product price we have for Alice, that's $20 billion. And then you have, what we think is serviceable, like what can be obtained, that can be anywhere between $30 million to $75 million if we're estimating being able to serve 100 to 250K entrepreneurs at $25 a month. So that is the market opportunity. And what we're trying to solve ultimately for these entrepreneurs is it's growth when it comes to revenue, and growth also in terms of being able to do things more efficiently, productivity, cost. On the right side, we have like the older version of the architecture of Alice. And the reason why I say older is because we have this is beta Alice, and we have Alice 1.0 that we're going to roll out like this month. And then we're already working on new upgrades, Alice 2.0 plus. And so this is just a reference for, how Alice has functioned so far. She was launched in April, and we've had tremendous traction since then, all the while knowing that she was just in beta. And there were improvements that we still had to make that, we were basically staggering. So in terms of the core capabilities, though, that's what I was hoping to focus on this slide. When you think about what is our product trying to do? Number one, we say strategic questioning framework. And why is that ours and proprietary? When you have conversations with people, you can leave the conversation either being motivated. You can say, this was a great conversation, or you can leave a conversation being defeated, or worst of all, you can leave a conversation with no impact at all. So it's easy to say, well, it's just a conversational tool, except the ability to have a great conversation is one of the greatest skills, because it requires understanding, it requires empathy, it requires context, it requires you to put your own ego aside and meet someone where they're at, but also elevate the conversation. And that skill, you can take years and years to learn just as a person. And so to be able to then program that into an AI, that's what we've been trying to do. And so the strategic framework that we are developing, we're nowhere at the final stage that we want to be, but we have been. It comes with that intention. And the way we approach that is through using collective experience of Stephen's, mine, and then also our advisors, of having done this for all these years, right? Because we've been in roles where we work with our clients to be able to have specific conversations, and that kind of nuance is being programmed into Alice. So that's a core capability that we would say is proprietary. It's our moat. From the start, Alice is multi-model, meaning she can switch in and out of different LLMs to do different functions. So Claude, GPT, Gemini, Llama. This we think is critical as a moat, but also we can leverage the benefits and the positives of different LLMs, and then also use it to calibrate each other in terms of responses, conversation quality, etc. Persistent memory, we have been developing this over time, where, to have a conversation with someone and then for it to actually be relevant to a business context that you are experiencing, you need to have persistent memory, whether you're a person or a tool or a technology. So being able to learn about you, store the memory, summarize it, bring it back in every interaction as context. We've been working on that. That's a capability. And the domain experience, I think that's both from a questioning framework that I already discussed, but also from the responses, right? Because our goal for Alice, which is the front end of our tool as a strategy partner, the goal is for her to be able to provide strategic responses that are not just regress to the mean. It's not just what would the most average person do in the most average situation. It is what is the right thing to do in your situation. And the right thing to do is, there is no like one size fits all answer. And so we are developing vector databases that store domain expertise in terms of strategy and operations, so that when Alice and the Looking Glass platform works with an entrepreneur to develop strategies, they draw from the vector databases, not just from the average response generated by the LLM, allowing for us to feel confident that the suggestions for your tool are unique to you, and they're unique to your business, and they are at least attempting to do the right thing for you specifically. So those are our core capabilities. And on the right side is the technology that has previously powered that. And we are making some major changes to that as we move forward as well. So this is Alice and her core capabilities. On the Looking Glass side, now, when I came on, it's been a few months, almost close to now, will be a year by the end of this year. When I came on, Stephen really had a very, very good vision and a product with Alice, and we've made improvements since. One thing we noticed, though, with Alice was that she's a wonderful strategic partner, but anybody that's been engaged with strategic partners in their careers know that those are not long-term engagements, right? Like, you work with McKinsey's, you work with, for me, PwC, KPMG, where I'm from. Strategy engagements are not they're not like lifetime projects. They are short-term projects, because once you have your whatever problem you're trying to solve for, your vision statement, your pitch deck, if you are raising money and if you're actually doing a business plan, once you get past all that, you move into execution. And so it was our vision to expand Alice and make a platform which is Alice through the Looking Glass. And so the Looking Glass will be the operational partner for Alice, which would be sort of what we call the back end of Alice, meaning you'll still communicate with Alice, but the Looking Glass platform will draw from agents that will do specific functions, right? Like marketing, finance. So within finance, that's revenue and cost reporting. Within marketing, that'll be social media, CRM. So all these different specialized agents will integrate through like a orchestration layer and a master LLM to be able to allow for entrepreneurs to do like operations across different functions. Just an example would be, you could literally see an end-to-end impact with, an entrepreneur has put out a social media campaign. You integrate we will be integrating all the metrics the success metrics of those campaigns that Alice can draw from on a daily basis. And then you have the, Stripe, you have all, billing platforms integrated. So you are able to then see the impact of both your CRM, your billing, and your social media together in a way that Alice can then make recommendations for strategy and operations that go beyond hypotheticals. It's real. This is what's happening to you today. Yesterday, last week you posted this and you had this engagement. And right after that, you had this kind of signups in the CRM tool. And so many people visited the website and so many people went and tried your product. And this is what your revenue is. Oh, and by the way, your bills have come in from these vendors and the overall margin of your product has gone up. The overall margin of your product has gone down. So that kind of like consolidated view in terms of like dashboards and recommendations that Alice and the Looking Glass can provide to entrepreneurs, we think that's a game changer because, there are so many people who have brilliant ideas. Certainly having a strategic partner can take them ways ahead, right? Because you have now a business plan in place, you have clarity, but that's still just half the journey. If you cannot operate, if you cannot execute, then an idea is just an idea at that point, right? So this is why someone had a question on there saying end to end, like how do you plan or to help an entrepreneur end to end? This is how we plan end to end because this becomes a daily partner. Like you can literally like look up the tool and what's going on across different areas of your business and be able to work on the recommendations provided. And in some cases, some of those recommendations can also be automated. We are not all for using agents to fully automate operations, which is possible, but that's where the hallucinations become a risk. So we will always recommend, a partnership in terms of operating back, right? Like going back and posting into social media based on the recommendation, etc., making like actual changes would be a partnership between the human and the tool. So this is our vision for Looking Glass. We've been playing around with prototypes. We've been doing some tests, but this is honestly where we are hoping to get support from investors to really be able to scale this platform. And the way the pricing would work for something like this would be it's modular, right? Not every entrepreneur needs everything, right? Not everybody needs HR or compliance. And so these will be modules that can be purchased as individuals, and therefore you see the price there. It could be like it could be cloud hosted and just one agent for a lower price, or a full suite of functional operations at a larger price. And then the reason why you see a very big number there, the $2,999, that's our vision for, building something that is highly customized for people that for larger businesses that require security and compliance and things like that, which will then require us to approach the infrastructure and hardware differently. So we won't, in those cases, while the architecture from a operational side will remain the same in terms of hosting, etc., we will have like self-hosted GPUs, etc., which will push up the price on the higher end of the range there, which is why you see the big range of how we envision Looking Glass to support entrepreneurs. So I talked about these product moats, domain expertise, multi-model independence, persistent memory. I didn't talk about trust, but Stephen kind of started alluding to it in his conversation. Ultimately, it all comes down to trust, right? Because when you are working with numbers, when you're working with financials, when you're working with strategy, you don't know if something worked until it didn't. right? And so you don't want to be that person that's like trying, the guinea pig that's trying and failing, as opposed to knowing in advance, hey, these are people that I can trust. And we've worked really hard to build that community trust. And we do that through just being authentic and honest and sharing our limitations, right? Sharing, when we're not trying to say we can do everything, because one, I don't think we need to, like humans are very capable, but also we're also trying to make sure that we are incredibly transparent, both in terms of what we can and cannot do, that allows us to maintain a relationship of trust with our future customers, but also our existing customers. Um, so this is just some numbers on, if we raise $1 million, how we would spend that additional to what we're already doing in terms of developing Alice. So 35% of that, a big portion of that would be marketing spend. And the reason why we want to highlight that is everything we've done so far, we have not spent even $1 in marketing. Like Steven's following on social media and everything that, like you see about Curiouser out there is 100% organic. So we believe that if we could even spend a little bit of marketing money, that we could really have a lift that would be tremendous in terms of our distribution, in terms of our outreach, because currently our distribution is truly through social media. And in spite of that, and the traction numbers that are coming up, we've had thousands of people join our waitlist in a short period of time. We've had, a very impressive amount of conversions from trials to subscribers, all this without any marketing whatsoever spend. So our goal is that if we can spend $350,000 in marketing, we feel like comfortable that the cost to acquire a new customer would be $25. And that, again, mind you, is from $0 to $25. And that could lead to 14,000 customers, which then is $30 million of revenue at steady state. So we just wanted to show you the kind of impact that we could have just with being able to put a portion of the money into marketing. And then the rest of it is just the salaries to expand our development and operational team. So this was the traction slide. So the waitlist, we actually kept the waitlist open only April to July, after which, if you go on our website now, the waitlist is gone. So that the 5,000 people that we have on our waitlist was all a very short period of time that we just put out some content on LinkedIn and people joined our waitlist. Our 60% subscriber to trial conversion rate, we charge $5 for trials because we didn't have capital to pay for the cost of goods sold, our vendor support expenses. And so we've been paying people to try our product, and in spite of that, people are trying. And then the conversion rate from from trial to subscriber is 60%. And then we talked about the LinkedIn community and the fact that we have a growing number of subscribers every month. So this one is just letting you know about our traction since our launch in April.
And the 60% conversion rate, I actually still find it hard to believe, but that's what Stripe tells us. That is compared to an industry standard, an industry average of, I think it's about 1 to 3%. 3% would be on the high end for Claude or GPT. They're converting around 1 to 3%. So of the people who pay $5 for a 2-week trial, 60% convert to the $25 per month subscription.
So this is just the same thing that we discussed in a chart form. So we don't need to discuss that any further, but just wanted to reiterate, how we plan to spend the money. The next slide. Okay, that's it. So we have a lot of questions, but just to close it out, we really appreciate your questions, and all your feedback is how we keep improving. So thank you so much.
Yeah, let me just say that and so much of what we're saying just seems so obvious, and yet it's just not happening. in the world today. But, you know, one of my principles is that the trick with technology is to avoid spreading darkness at the speed of light. And, you know, 90%, 99% of all the generative AI being designed right now is being designed to take what we already do and do it faster, not better, faster. And I would argue it's getting worse. And there's slop, and it's getting awful out there, which is probably why all the businesses are pushing back and people aren't converting. Because if you don't know where you're going and you just speed things up, you're just going to get lost faster. And so we'd like to think that we're the ones, engineering light. We're the ones turning this thing around to benefit business and to benefit all of us. So with that, we will close the formal part of our presentation. And Mary, are you looking at a bunch of questions here?
Yeah, we've had some great questions. I just randomly start reading out a few. I'm 100%, this is from Andrew Stein. I'm 100% on board with the approach, augment versus automate. Though obviously automation does play a role, it isn't the driver. I'm still unclear on how the augmentation works, how it promotes better thinking over other options out there. The other options out there are they're not even created to support better thinking. I mean, that is not even the intention. So the way if you look at foundational models, and there's another question here about how does this compare to other foundational models? We are not a foundational model. Let's just start there. A foundational model is the intention of a foundational model is completely different from what we are trying to do. We are an application that sits over a foundational model. A foundational model has metrics that are speed. They keep trying to say they reduce hallucinations. They aren't. But the whole goal of a foundational model is to truly say, how do I do your job for you? That's literally what it is. You ask a question and you get the answer, the most likely answer based on all the data that they have access to and that it's been trained for. And so both from an intention and how it operates, it's not created to help you think better. So we are taking the concept, we are taking a foundational model and then using some parts of that technology, but ultimately layering all of our own applications to be able to modify it into a tool that actually helps you think. Meaning, you don't have to ask a question, and we're not going to be jumping at bits to give you an answer as you see any of the other foundational models. The process is an extensive onboarding process where, frankly, in the beginning, you're not even in control. And, we sometimes get feedback on like, man, I don't like the loss of control in your tool, because that's what GPT is, right? Like, oh, you ask a question and GPT will give you an answer right away. Alice kind of talks to you literally like would a strategic advisor. She'll introduce herself and she'll say, hey, I'm going to get to know you. I'm going to ask you a few questions, and my questions are going to adapt based on our conversation. And she's going to lead the first part of the onboarding. Very different, right? Like GPT doesn't lead you. Like, so the first part of the onboarding is like, you're sitting in front of a therapist's office, you're sitting with a strategy consultant you just hired, and she's asking questions, and those questions are unique. They're unique to you.
Yeah, I'm going to answer that question slightly. I mean, as an entrepreneur, not as an engineer. But if you deconstruct the entrepreneurial journey, it starts with an idea in one person's mind. And if it doesn't translate itself into a story, it's dead on arrival. It's got to formulate a narrative that then attracts resources, capital, and it attracts people, which then builds an organization, which then produces a product. And then you've got your iterative loop product market fit, and then you got scale, and eventually of impact. That is an innovation supply chain, if you will. And you can deconstruct and map that journey out. Every entrepreneur goes through that journey, and every entrepreneur is somewhere in that journey. Now, that journey isn't task-oriented. as much as it is an exploration of where you're at, the challenges you're facing. It's a conversation. So fundamentally, the answer, I think, to the question is that Alice is curious and she asks questions and she gets to know you. And so she helps you articulate your story. She helps you figure out your product, but it's basically conversational and it's interactive. And that's what we mean by augmentation versus automation.
That's how it's different, right? The process, like the point is, how is the process different? It is the questioning, it is the onboarding, it is the approach to how the information is collected and then generated back to you in terms of outputs is completely different from you ask a question and you get an answer that may or may not be relevant to you. So that's on the augmentation and the automation piece. And then there are questions out there on, I think I saw a few really good questions from Lenovo who you could come off mute if you'd like, or let me see the questions, right? Like Lenovo had a question, how does this extend into the full entrepreneur journey? We discussed that. And then we said, then he asks, how do you tackle hallucinations, bias, alignment, and trust, and do this 10 times better than competitors? And that's the part where the hallucinations, bias, alignment, that's where we are looking at and working on technology that is the vector databases and RAG. And someone else said, there are others beyond RAG. And sure, we're really looking at all the different vector databases and RAG is what we have implemented. And we are certainly open and looking for other technologies as well. But that's that is one of the main ways to tackle the hallucinations, bias, alignment, and trust, because we're not relying on the regress to the mean response from the LLMs. We are leveraging our own frameworks and data to always cross-check, both from a questioning perspective, but also from the outputs that are being generated. So that is the answer to how do you plan to tackle hallucinations, bias, alignment.
And hallucinations are a much, much bigger problem. In fact, they're a deal breaker when it comes to automation, right? In other words, if you are taking a person that works with you and you are replacing them, theoretically, with an AI, and that AI goes faster but makes mistakes, that's a real problem. And that's what's happening. But if you're augmenting that person, and that person is looking at that AI as a strategic coach, as a partner, hallucinations within that brainstorming conversational mode aren't actually as serious an issue as they would be when you're trying to replace people, because it's reliability. It's reliability, not brainstorming, not creativity, not thinking.
Exactly. And that's so one question was who is the human in the loop? And in this case, it would be the entrepreneur, right? Because the entrepreneur is someone that would be doing a lot of that manually, right? And so this is not a replacement of somebody. This is augmenting the entrepreneur with information, data, strategies, questioning to enhance productivity. So the human in loop in this case would be the small team. It could be an entrepreneur, it could be a small business of 3, 4, 5 people, and it's augmenting that entire team with tools around marketing, HR, finance that allows the team to operate at a higher level than without access to that kind of information. I think Lenovo had some interesting reflective questions as well about, how do you measure better thinking in real day-to-day founder decisions? Yeah. And Stephen, this is our favorite thing.
We struggle with that. We struggle with that.
Yeah, because how do you measure better thinking, right? And so I think the idea here is you have to measure outcomes. And this is somewhat of a long game, because in one of our last webinars, someone also asked, hey, what are metrics? How do you measure? Ultimately, you can say, there are tools that help you measure thinking, right? Like IQ, this and that, but that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is, hey, if you're thinking better, what does that lead to? It leads to solving the problem that we're trying to solve for here through our product in this case, right? Which is, we think that it's a better business outcome. Whatever milestones that you have, that we will actually work together to create through this whole process. You are accomplishing those milestones in a way that you feel like you have both control, but you also have support. And so really, the thinking part itself is not something we need to in our product, right? There are other products that it could be relevant to, but we're not necessarily using thinking as a metric to measure. It's the indirect impact that has on the outputs is where we are going to focus measurement. Like someone asked us last week, like, how are you going to measure compared to DeepSeek and compared to some of these LLMs? And I reiterate that that's not what we're not playing in that space. It's what Stephen said, right? We're not trying to go as fast as we can in terms of developing the outputs, which is what a lot of these tools measure. That's in fact the opposite, right? We're in fact if we actually start measuring against them, we would literally be on the other spectrum, because what we're trying to do is slow people down in terms of being able to think in a way that creates the outcomes. And so at the end of the experience, it is the outcomes that's the success.
The ultimate metric, and the CEO of Microsoft said this about a year ago, which is ultimately it ought to have an impact on our GDP, right? I know that's at a macroeconomic level, but on average, 90% of startups fail. 10% succeed. The 10% succeed are the ones that are driving 2/3 of all new job creation. And based on analysis we've done, for every point you can improve that 10% from 10 to 11 to 12, you're creating somewhere between 250,000 and 500,000 jobs. So ultimately, on a macroeconomic level, we would evaluate impact based on economy. On a micro entrepreneur by entrepreneur level, it's whether or not we're helping entrepreneurs pitch and raise capital, right? Whether we're helping entrepreneurs articulate their store in an effective way, whether we're helping entrepreneurs develop product and feedback loops with their marketplace to achieve product market fit. Each one of those pieces or phases of that journey could theoretically be measured, and we could do that eventually. We could do that. There's no reason why we couldn't do that once we have the data to scale.
That makes
But
perfect sense.
Outcomes.
Outcomes, yeah, it's success. One of the questions, and Lenovo really has great questions. He seems to have thought about this.
Is his quota? Is his number of questions up? Has he achieved his quota of questions allowed per person, or?
We'll have this last one from him, and then we'll go to the other ones. What core SMB pain does Curiouser solve first? Time, cash flow, or focus? I'd say focus first, because that's Alice. She's helping you focus on what is your vision, what is your mission. She's strategy, followed by time, because then that turns into a business plan, and then followed by operations, which is cash flow, which is the Looking Glass platform. That's the order of how the entrepreneur is being supported through our entire platform. Then we had some questions, some people, and I want to address this only because I don't want to leave it hanging there. Like, hey, if you're all working with other LLMs, what is the risk working with other LLMs? So there are also, like, instead of large language models, small language models, we've been testing those out in terms of being able to use small language models to do what we're doing, which is actually, because we're such a, our business case is that we're trying to solve is not like everything in the world, right? It's not, which is what the foundational models do, the large language models do. It's going to be very possible for us to just switch out of everything and use our own small language model to do it. The only reason, frankly, we're not doing it is from a cost perspective, not just for us, but also for our our users, because, a lot of like when you start hosting your own GPUs and this and that, it adds up. And so to be able to like, there are users who actually don't really care right now that, hey, you are a wrapper because you're dependent on other LLMs. And there are those who do. So we have the ability to do both, which is what I was saying is that, we are multi-LLM. We can use all the different LLMs plus small language models that we have developed ourselves, plus we are testing how some of that can be self-hosted, and which path we go down, that some of it is truly cost dependent and some of it is our strategy that will evolve over time. Like we have discussed at some point, just like, all self-hosted and our own like small language model. It is prohibitive. All of that is a bit prohibitive for us right now from a cost perspective.
The other advantage, excuse me, Mayuri, the other advantage to owning the foundational model side of the business, and quite frankly, maybe the most important for me, is back to trust. Because we can control privacy and security 100% within our world. We can tell you that we're not looking at your data. We can tell you that we don't see your data, we don't use your data, we don't sell your data. We can make that commitment to you, but we can't guarantee what happens when that data gets shared back and forth through tokens with large language models, right? We can't, no one can, right? OpenAI and Anthropic and Google get to do their own thing. And so ultimately, it would be extraordinary, and we'll get there, to be able to go to our users and go to our customers and say, this is your data. It's absolutely yours. No one sees it. No one will ever see it. We don't sell it. That's not how we make money. There's no deception here. The way we make money is you pay us, and we have a margin that covers our variable cost and contribution and fixed cost. It's all out there. That would be a breakthrough. It would be the first generative AI that ultimately you could trust.
So Andrew
that would be amazing.
Yeah, Andrew has some great points on, how much proprietary knowledge backs Alice. I mean, to your point, I think we want it to be a significant portion of Alice. And then he says, this feels like a big opportunity for differentiation. It does feel like I could configure my AI tools to augment, encourage thinking, but Alice only knowledge feels like real value you can sell. And that's easier to buy than build. So I mean, that's exactly right, Andrew. That's how we've been thinking about it. Is our like specific knowledge that comes from like the entrepreneur, our journey as strategists over years that we are baking in, is ultimately that remains the moat over time. And then Andrew says, I wonder if Stephen Mayuri and the board collective knowledge in entrepreneurship becomes a selling point when it comes to differentiation.
Well, yeah, I mean, there is a founder market fit thing going on here. And I think a lot of great products and a lot of great startups have founder market fit, right? We're building a product that was the thing I always needed as an entrepreneur. But there are so many, once you have this reflective AI technology developed, in that there's this inherent curiosity and this inherent ability to ask questions, listen, learn, and evolve, which ultimately means that you're not prompting the AI, it's prompting you, and it's being customized through conversation, which is extraordinary. You can integrate all kinds of flavors into that. You could create versions for Gen Z. You could create versions for boomers. You could integrate Myers-Briggs intellectual property into that so that entrepreneurs could get a better understanding of their strengths and weaknesses. I mean, there's literally no end to it. You could go vertical in terms of industry specificity. That's not hard to do. That is not hard to do. We can do that. We will do that.
And then we have a couple of important questions from either Jan or Jan. And he says, so if I agree Alice is the solution, will you be providing some of the basic information such as minimum investment? On WeFunder, the minimum investment is $100.
Right. It's $100 minimum, and we're looking for $1 million on WeFunder. But we're considering, in the spirit of full disclosure here, We have been approached by some angels and some VC, a lot of whom I've just known for years. We've been reluctant to take institutional capital, but we raised $400,000, almost $400,000 on an initial pre-seed round, which was a safe 25% discount, which were friends of mine, but they were also institutional investors. But we may reserve the right to raise more capital in a parallel institutional process. We're thinking about that. But even if we were able to right now raise, say, 5 million through some institutional group of investors, Mary would still pursue WeFunder, because it's important that we engage our community on principle. I really believe that. I think that's part of the problem right now in the generative AI industry, this disconnect between this massive amount of money and the customer. I don't think there's a whole lot of connection there. So $100 minimum, $1 million is what we're looking at. It's 20% discount to first price institutional round in terms of structured as a safe. And that's where we're at right now.
And he said, when will it roll out? The reservations rolled out about a week ago. And so you can literally click on the WeFunder link that goes along with this.
We haven't gone public yet. We're not actually, it's within our community right now. We haven't gone out into the millions of people that WeFunder has on their platform. We've basically been focused 100% on our community, which basically is our social media and our email list. But we're already doing quite well. We're not allowed to talk about specifics, but it's been really quite rewarding, actually. In a really funny way, not to get overly sentimental, but when one person invests $100, to me, it means as much as if a venture capital firm was investing, $1 million, maybe more.
Yeah. And then
definitely more, honestly. When my friends and family invested in our initial safe, that keeps you up at night. You do not fucking sleep when you know that that they believe in you to that point. You've got like a fire under your butt, to say the least. If that makes any sense.
There's a question from B a couple of times about demo. So one, on our website, we do have Alice. This is our beta version. We are about to roll out a new version. And Stephen and I went back and forth on whether we should just demo the new version right now on the call. And I think now the ship has sailed. But if you want something very quick, you can literally go on our website, and the beta Alice is already available to demo. The Alice 1.0 has updated interfaces and an updated onboarding and conversation process. And so I don't know if that's, Stephen, like webinar 3, where we just focus on a demo or something like that.
That would be great to do that.
So maybe something like that. Yeah. So we really had talked about doing that, but we didn't know how to manage all our time. But we are, that's one of the things we're proud of, is that, a lot of this is it's not just a demo, by the way. The people, Alice is on our website, is being used by, we have users, many subscribers using that Alice.
But this is important. And I think you should all be pleased about this. We charge for that demo. I want to make certain that that's clear. Okay, we're not giving this away. Why are we not giving this away? Because we're not in the business of spending billions of dollars to, I don't know what, collect your data and lose it time. So we're actually cash flow positive as a company. We may be the only generative AI company in all of Silicon Valley that's cash flow positive. Now, granted, that's not quite legitimate because we take very little to no salary. So it's not necessarily fair to say that, but it's a fact that We charge $5 for 2 weeks because there's a variable cost involved. And we want to break even to make money. And even at the $5 2 week, we still have about I don't know, I'm going to guess 40 to 50% margin. And at the 25 per month, we're somewhere in maybe the 70, 80%, depending on usage margin. So when we say demo, we really mean paid trial. Although I guess we could make exceptions for investors, but we haven't yet. Our investors want us to make money.
Right.
That's the point. That's the point. Remember that?
Yeah, so right now it's when I say demo, that's exactly, it's just to sign up, it's $5. But to Stephen's point, we can make an exception. And more importantly, I think, Stephen, we just have a follow-up webinar. So that shows like that I can personally walk people through how you would sign up and how the onboarding would go and how, Alice would specifically generate like outputs. So that's on the last question I want to address, because we're out of time, is user experience. And, this is, again, one of our favorite topics to discuss. And the team that works on our user experience is also on the call right now. But, what is your vision for user experience? I think it also must have been Andrew who asked that question about like, one thing we haven't talked about is the user experience. Sure, plenty of people can configure solutions to do similar things, but the user experience differentiates as more and more solutions create commoditization. And that is literally, like our mantra. And I will have to already tell you in advance that we're not there yet. Like we want to be there, but we are not there. But that is...
It's very frustrating as a team to have this clear idea of where you want to get to and have no technology barriers, really. It's purely capital, people, and time, right? It's pure capital constraint at this point. And that does get honestly frustrating, because every time we put a product out there, I'm not happy with it, to be totally brutally honest. But if you really want to get creative on user experience, where I think generative AI goes, not to get overly visionary here, is I do believe it becomes a true brainstorming personal partner of each of ours. And so I don't know why you wouldn't be able to take a walk, through a virtual woods with Steve Jobs or Socrates or the Mad Hatter or Clayton Christensen and brainstorm and have them ask you questions and have them push you, have them challenge you. Steve Jobs did all of his thinking walking. And so there are so many phenomenal things we can do to impact humanity here, none of which is that extraordinarily difficult. I just think the industry, quite frankly, is constrained by a lack of imagination. They're all doing the same thing, and they're all attempting to do it incrementally better at the cost of billions of dollars. OpenAI loses $83 million a day. $83 million a day. Our total raise is the amount of money OpenAI loses in 36 minutes. That's nuts. As a student of business history, that qualifies as insane.
Yep. There are many people here. I'm very impressed with all the participation. There are many questions we couldn't answer, but I think we got to the gist of it. Many people want to have personal conversations with us on Stephen, on user interfaces and ideas. So please just like reach out to us. We love
DM me or DM or email us, and we will meet with each of you individually. We will talk with you, whatever. This is what we love. Well, this is what I love to do. Is so. Please reach out to us.
Is there anything else that maybe someone would like to raise their hand, or I guess next steps? I mean, everyone wants to, know more about the product, the demo. So be on the lookout for webinar
Let's
3.
schedule it. Yeah, let's do that, Mayuri. That'll be your baby. We'll walk people through what is essentially our first product, Alice 1.0. We've been calling Alice Beta, but she's kind of almost an MVP that we put out there in the market to test it and to learn so that we could, study product market fit in the wild. But what we'll show you next is actually Alice 1.0. It'll be the first version of our product.
Well,
Mayuri's
if
baby.
that's it, if that's
Mayuri's
it,
baby.
then
All right.
that's not true. Team, thank you so much, and we will be back in touch. Thank you. We
We're
appreciate it.
grateful to all of you. Thank you.